What's up top 10 fam, hope you're having an awesome day. I'm your host Ayman Hassan and welcome back to another video. Now Halloween is scary enough as a day on its own because of, the obvious. We have the ghosts, the costumes, the scary movies, the witches, and of course those angry parents that just refuse to give you candy for whatever reason. Maybe they're just having a bad day, I don't really know. But excluding all the shenanigans that come with Halloween, the day has been one of dark and tragic events throughout history. So with that being said, these are the top 10 scariest events that happened on Halloween. Starting us off at number 10 is costume or reality. Halloween Day 1957. Betty Fabiano and her husband Peter were winding down and getting ready for bed when the doorbell rang. Despite it being past 11 p.m, they assumed that maybe it was a group of late night trick-or-treaters, and since they had some candy left, and so Peter went downstairs to answer the door and was greeted with a man wearing a mask. Betty heard some muffled voices downstairs, kind of like a man was impersonating a woman's voice, then a pop, and then a thumb. She ran downstairs to discover Peter lying on the ground in a pool of blood with a gunshot wound on his chest. He died on the way to the hospital and suspects were hunted down immediately. Now here is like the biggest plot twist of plot twist history. Now the couple had their fair share of trouble, and while separated at one point, Betty started seeing a woman called Joan. That's not the plot twist, by the way. They decided to take another jab at their marriage, and Peter's only condition was that Betty could never see or speak about Joan again, to which she agreed. Joan obviously then had a motive and was questioned, and things she was saying just weren't adding up. She claimed that she was home all night, but neighbors claimed she left on a drive for a very long time. An anonymous tip led the police to the murder weapon and then the assailant, 40-year-old Goldine Pizer. She admitted to killing Peter under the spell of a woman she was in love with, and that woman was Joan. Now coming in at number 9 is Don't Touch My Candy, Halloween Day 2011. A 55-year-old man residing in Chicago realized at 2:30 p.m. that his bag of candy was missing. Call the police. Now I don't know if that's referring to his bag of candy that he got during trick-or-treating or the bag he was using to give candy to kids. I mean, you could be 50 and trick-or-treating. I'm not gonna judge you. Who am I to judge you? Either way, suddenly outraged by this realization, the man blamed his neighbor Maria Adams for stealing it even though she really didn't. The man grabbed a bunch of steak knives from his kitchen and headed to her house, where he ended up stabbing her countless times. Maria desperately tried to defend herself by throwing plates at him, but it was just no use. She was in critical condition by the time she got to the hospital and ended up dying the next morning. The man was charged with first-degree murder and aggravated domestic battery. Can we just take a second, please, to just realize how ridiculous this is? Like, I simply just do not get it. He killed a woman over a bag of candy. Like, unless that bag had the secret of a life in it or the elixir of immortality, it's just not that deep. Get a new bag. At number 8 we have The Disappearance, Halloween Day 1955. Mother of 2 Marilyn Damon stopped at a food fair on Long Island to do a quick bit of shopping. She left 2-year-old Stephen and 7-month-old Pamela outside the store and told Stephen to watch his little sister. First of all, a 2-year-old cannot be left alone to watch anyone else. Like, that is still baby as hell. Like, what are you doing? 10 minutes later she came out and both children were nowhere to be found. Freaking the hell out, Marilyn starts looking everywhere and thankfully finds Pamela nearby, still in her stroller unharmed, but Stephen was still nowhere to be found. 5,000 people searched for him the next day, but detectives and police were never able to solve the case or find him. Honestly, I feel bad about it, I really do, but also you can't leave your kids alone ever, especially if they're that young. Like, a 2-year-old can't even defend themselves from anyone, how are they meant to defend their younger sibling as well? Like, Marilyn, you should have known better. 2 years old! What can you even do at 2 years old? Nothing! Can you even walk? No, you probably can. You know what I mean, it's young. Now filling on number 7 slot is The Note, Halloween Day 2012. Now Julie Keith was on her way to Kmart to buy some quick last-minute cheap Halloween decorations in her hometown of Damascus, Oregon. That was a lot to say in one breath. Either way, inside the graveyard kit that she purchased, she found a handwritten letter from an inmate at the Chinese labor camp that had made the kit. The letter pleads for the reader to send it to the World Human Rights Organization because thousands of people were suffering in China. The writer claimed that them, along with a lot of other workers in the Massanjia labor camp, were forced to work 15-hour days with no weekends or holidays. If they refused, they would get tortured or beat and only got paid 10 yuan a month, which is about $1.61 a month. A month. The letter wasn't signed, but Julie did pass it on to the organization, and Kmart launched their own investigation into it as well. Thankfully, months later, the labor camp was exposed and the inmates were freed. Woohoo, we love a happy ending. Now at number 6 is the prank gone wrong, Halloween Day 1998. 21-year-old Carl Jackson was driving through the Bronx with his girlfriend to pick up her son from a Halloween party. While stopped at an intersection, a bunch of teenagers started throwing eggs at his car, and so he got out to confront them. No one's about to throw eggs at me when my girl's in the car. I'll front on them. I'll square up. That's me as Carl. Either way, one of the teens, 17-year-old Curtis Sterling, pulled out a handgun and straight up shot Carl in the head, killing him instantly. And egging people on Halloween is quite a common prank, but it's gone awry so many times. Curtis ended up being sentenced to 20 years in prison, and every year on Halloween he gets a card from Carl's mother saying, "I'm glad you're still there." And honestly, kudos to her, I would do the exact same thing. What a senseless, unnecessary killing. Like, I'm getting mad at this list, I really am. It's pissing me off. Coming in at number 5 is the Mailman, Halloween Day 2012. Halloween is always a lit time. It's very scary, to the point some people claim they get scared to death. Exaggeration. Pussies. Now, a mailman in Denver was on his route making his deliveries, and he showed up at one house that had a corpse decoration on its porch. Sort of annoyed at the placement of the decoration, he sort of sidestepped it out of the way to the side and delivered the mail. As he was walking away, he realized it wasn't a decoration from any angle. It was a real man that was dead. Turns out the dead man, Del Porch, had collapsed and died on his porch when returning from his night shift, but because of the timing of Halloween, it just didn't look sus. Honestly, you guys, imagine dying and someone thinking you're a Halloween decoration and just moving your body to the side. Like, biggest L I'd ever take, and I'm not even bloody alive. That's the biggest L. At number 4 is the costume gone wrong. Wow, I need to think of better names because I already did prank gone wrong. Sorry about that. Either way, Halloween Day 2012. An 8-year-old girl was so excited to dress up for Halloween in her hometown in Beaver County, Pennsylvania. She was at a relative's bonfire that night and went to play on the hillside when her aunt Janet saw her in the bushes. Assuming she was a skunk because of her black outfit, hat, and white tassel, she asked her son to shoot the pest. So Thomas went in and got the gun and shot the girl in the shoulder and abdomen. As soon as they realized the grave mistake that had happened, she was helicoptered to Pittsburgh Children's Hospital straight away. She remained in critical condition but did actually survive. What a close call. Like, oh my god, I would have never been able to live with that if I was Thomas or Janet. Like, killing my relative because I thought they were a skunk? Ugh, that would have been an even bigger L. Such an L. Filling at number 3 slot is Bad Candy, Halloween Day 1974. 8-year-old Timothy O'Brien was going trick-or-treating with his dad and sister in Pasadena, Texas. They got to a house where no one answered the door, and getting impatient, the kids ran off to the next house while their dad Ronald stayed behind. He re-emerged a few minutes later with a few pixie sticks, saying the person did come out and give it to him for his kids and their friends. They went home and Timothy had his pixie stick and started complaining that his stomach was hurting. Then he ran to the bathroom vomiting and convulsing, and eventually went limp in his dad's arms and died on the way to the hospital. Turns out the pixie sticks he had a lethal dose of potassium cyanide in it. The police then went into panic mode trying to locate the other kids that had those same pixie sticks, and thankfully none of the other kids had ended up eating them, but they were all found with enough cyanide in them to kill 3 to 4 adults. In each one, not even all together. Ronald was never suspected until the investigation revealed he was over $100,000 in debt and could never hold down a job. He had 21 in the past few years. 21 jobs? What the hell? Turns out he had taken out a total of $60,000 worth of life insurance on his kids, which his wife was unaware of. He ended up killing his son to get the insurance and gave the candy to the other kids as well, just to lessen suspicion. You are complete and ultimate trash if you murder a family member, especially your own kid. Like, getting triggered. Stop getting triggered. Now at number 2 is Heads Will Roll, Halloween Day 2014. So Halloween decorations are always a good time, and that night a man was seen dragging a headless body out of his apartment and just leaving it on the street. Just casual, really. He came back out a few minutes later with the head and then proceeded to kick it to the other side of the street. And I know you're probably wondering what the hell onlookers thought of this, and most of them just thought it was a prank or that the man didn't want to use the decoration anymore. Either way, it was only an hour or so later when someone actually tried to move the body from the middle of the street did they realize the decoration wasn't a decoration. It was a real decapitated body. Turns out the body was Patricia Ward's and her murderer was her son who had a history of mental illness. He decapitated her, left her body on the street, and then killed himself by jumping in front of a train. This just ended well for no one, not Patricia, not her son, and not the person who moved her body. Like, no, not happily ever after. And finally, at number 1 is The Cradle Snatcher, Halloween Day 1977. George Carter had just put his 19-month-old Nima into her crib in their home in Oklahoma. The next morning, he woke up to find the child missing from her cradle despite all the windows and doors being locked. It's believed the abductor was hiding in her closet that night and snuck the child out when the parents fell asleep. A month later, a group of kids playing in an abandoned house 4 blocks away from the Carter home were horrified when the decomposed body of an infant came tumbling out of the house's fridge. That child ended up being Nima, but it doesn't even end there. Now, before the Carters lived in that house, it was home to another family that had 2 twin daughters. The year beforehand, the 3.5-year-old girls were stolen and lured out of their house in broad daylight. They were taken to a house by their frequent babysitter, 17-year-old Jacqueline Rubidoux, who told them to get in the fridge and that their aunt would come get them later for some ice cream. A few days later, cries were heard from the fridge by a few children playing in the house next door, so they went inside the house to find out what it was. One of the children opened the fridge door to find Tina jumping out at them. She had managed to stay alive by breathing through a hole in the fridge, but her twin had died from asphyxia. And you know who else called on Jacqueline to watch their child? Nima's parents. Tina even told officers that Jackie Boo was the one who took them to the house, but it failed to lead to a conviction because there was no physical evidence despite her being shady as hell and the child literally identifying her. But let's just not believe her, shall I? Let's just not believe her. And that's it for today's video, guys. Since Halloween falls on a Thursday, well, like tomorrow, I'm a bit less worried since it's not a weekend, but still, be safe, you guys. Is it just me or is it getting crazier out there? Joker reference, hehe. But anyway, guys, I've been your host, Eamon Hassan, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye!